Welcome to another in the continuing sustainability lecture series. Tonight's lectures are focused on sustainable transportation, but also affordable and safe transportation. Tomorrow is the university's annual Day of Dialogue, so I encouraged our speakers to say a little bit today about how mobility is something that's not always equitably distributed. We've developed a transportation system in this country that requires almost that you own a car, and not everybody can afford a car, so it tends not to be a very equitable or affordable transportation system, and that's something we hope will change. So for those of you who are new here tonight, if anyone is, I'm Vicki Watson, Professor of Environmental Studies, and tonight our speakers will be introduced by another of our faculty. Phil Condon is the professor who directs our environmental writing emphasis in environmental studies. He also has a long-term history of working on sustainable transportation issues as well as labor issues, and was a long-time chair of the University's Sustainable Campus Committee. And during some of the years when it got a lot done, like convincing the university to hire a full-time sustainability coordinator. So I think I'll turn it, oh wait, we have a very appropriate announcement from one of our students, so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Oh, I get to use the
Hold that about 4 or 5 inches from your mouth.
Okay. Can everybody hear? Yes?
Bring it a little closer.
Okay. I'm Trina, and a couple other students and I are trying to get a carpool program going at the university. It's just going to be a 3-week kind of informal commitment pilot program, and basically we're trying to show the university that there is interest in getting carpooling going at the university, and we're trying to figure out some different ways to make this more possible. So this is all going to be done through Facebook. So we have a Facebook group, and it's not launched yet because the campaign hasn't officially launched, but we'll have a Facebook group and a survey. And even if you can't commit to carpooling, we just really appreciate your participation in the Facebook group and taking the survey so we can, start figuring out how we can make carpooling a bigger part of transportation at UM. So I'm going to send around a little bit of more information, and if you guys could write your emails on the back if you're interested in hearing about what the Facebook page address is. And so next week when we launch the Facebook page, we'll send you an email with the link, and you guys can go there and start filling out the survey and start uploading your photos, and it just really help us out. We're really trying to get a great program going. Oh, and I didn't mention, everything you do can win prizes, so even more of an incentive to do all of this. If you join the Facebook group, prizes, survey, prizes, upload photos, prizes, like prizes for everything. So we just really appreciate you guys helping us out with this. So I'll send this around, and if I could get emails, I would love it. So thank you guys.
As Vicki said, my name's Phil Condon, and I teach in environmental studies. And while the area I teach my courses in, writing and lit, is not directly concerned with transportation, although I'd say in some ways students write about that actually pretty often. I do have an interest and some working history in the area, and I've worked with both of tonight's presenters and respect their work a lot. I don't know whether students are new to Missoula or have been here a while, but it's a very exciting small city to be in terms of transportation issues, in terms of walking and biking. And 2 of the reasons why it is such an exciting city, why so much is being done, and why there's so many opportunities to get involved to make it an even more pedestrian and bike-friendly city. 2 of those reasons are our presenters tonight. And I will introduce, just give a brief introduction for each of them, and then our format will be that Nancy's going to talk first. She has a PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll take maybe 5 minutes of questions that might occur to you about that, and then we'll bring Bob up. He also has a PowerPoint, and we'll talk, and we'll take a few minutes after that directed just at that. We'll try to break this up a little bit for everybody, and then they have kind of a joint PowerPoint about a local issue and a local project of interest on all these issues, and they'll talk about that, and then we'll take we'll open it wide open for questions from anybody. And one thing, too, to be thinking about, since our focus in the whole lecture series that Vicky's put together is about careers and will work for sustainability, students looking ahead, I'm sure either of these folks would welcome some questions about career opportunities or how they got started doing what they're doing. Other people they know, they're both in touch with transportation, people working in this field, alternative and progressive transportation around the country. So you might ask them some questions about that. As I said, myself, I was on the Missoula City Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Board for about 8 years, working, trying to advise the city and interpret citizen needs and everything in terms of safe routes to schools, which is a really growing program, identifying safe biking and walking for students and trying to get more students biking and walking and less parents dropping them off. And I was also on the Sustainable Campus Committee. A big concern and was about UM's carbon footprint and greenhouse gas inventory. And in our first somewhat tentative inventory, campus-wide, we discovered that transportation in all its forms accounted for just under 1/3 of all of UM's associated greenhouse gas emissions. So that right there tells you what an important issue it is just on those terms, in terms of carbon, and we were very interested in that. And we worked with Nancy about that. If you're on campus, you know about if you haven't been here for the last 10 years, you may not have seen all the changes that have been made and how many more students, I think, and faculty and staff use other ways of transport other than single car. But it's been really exciting to watch happen. So that's plenty from me. I think right now, like I said, I'll tell you just a little bit about each one of them. Nancy Wilson is the first director, so I guess the only director so far, of ASUM Transportation, the office in the Associated Students of the University of Montana offices that focuses on transportation. She entered this arena as a neighborhood campus activist for transportation issues and worked into this job where she's responsible for directing all the efforts around campus. Bob Giordano co-founded Free Cycles Missoula in 1996 and is the current program director of that. I'm sure some of you know what that's about and have used that. That program has overseen the giveaway of 8,800 bicycles and counting to those in need of a bike. He's also the founder and executive director of MIST, the Missoula Institute of Sustainable Transportation. And since 2000, MIST has worked on designing and implementing transportation systems that are safe, equitable, as Vicki said, there are issues of equitability, safe, equitable, and environmentally sound. Bob likes to ride all kinds of bikes, fix anything with pedals, and turn cities into communities. So let's welcome them both. And go ahead. And I'm going to turn this over to Nancy first.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a really loud voice, so I'll try not to blast you out of the room. I like to say, speaking of environmental jobs, I have the best job in town. I get to be paid to do what I really love and to be an activist in this community and make changes. And I get to work on campus to do that, so it doesn't get any better than that. ASUM Office of Transportation came about through a few-year study. There was a big campus-wide committee, faculty, staff, students, administration, trying to figure out what to do about parking. And what came out of that study, and there was community-wide involvement in that also. There was a long 100-point thing that came out of that, but the top recommendation was that a position needed to be developed to promote transportation options. And the university didn't feel at that point that they had the funding to do that, So actually, Bob went to the ASUM Senate and talked to them and got them to develop the initial fee, transportation fee. And that's how this office came about. At the time, we were just going to talk about, we were going to just promote transportation options. But what we found was that the options needed a little more option. So we decided we had to change ours to promote and provide transportation options. We started as a $4 fee. It has gone up to $26. But when we started with the $4 fee, we actually didn't have any services. We just had an office. So now we'll go through and show you some of the options that we've come up with. We did get national award in 2008. The main reason that we received the national award is it is unique for student government to be in charge of transportation at a university. And we've been able to do things a lot faster than most places that have their transportation offices within their administration. Because many times, I mean, if you're looking at a full university, your funding might go to, let's say, football instead of buses. So this way we have dedicated funding to transportation options and we can get stuff done quite a bit faster. So I just want to, why bother with transportation options? Don't we all have a car, as Vicki said? Aren't we all, able to drive? The truth is that students can either own a car or go to school. It costs about the same. So when you start to look at it that way, you go, ooh, maybe I could get rid of that car, pay for my education, and not take out quite so many loans. And if you look at some of these other tidbits, it truly is your third largest expense is transportation. So sometimes your second largest expense, it depends on your income level. So not to mention all the other benefits of transportation options. So we are run by students. We're run by a student board, overseen by ASUM president and vice president. If you know any of these people and you have suggestions, grab them, chat with them. We meet weekly and talk about what needs to be done on campus. We have a significant budget. Transit is expensive, but for the amount of transit that we provide, our cost per ride is about a third of the national average of transit. So we do it cheap, even though you might look at this and say it doesn't look very cheap to me, but we do. We do promote other services. We promote Mountain Line. Before this office started, Mountain Line existed. Free Grizz cards worked on the buses, but nobody knew about it. So we spend a lot of time teaching people how to ride the bus. Most people in Montana, if they've ever taken a bus, it's been a school bus. They've never had a transit system. And to be quite honest, there is a transit system in Billings, Great Falls, Butte, and Bozeman, but we could probably add them all together to get the ridership of what we get in Missoula. So another thing, we have a van pool system that runs to outlying areas. We have TDM, or Transportation Demand Management program, called Missoula in Motion. If you don't belong, you should. You win prizes for not driving to campus. You just have to commit to not drive to campus one day a week, and you can register for all sorts of fun prizes. And it helps give statistics to those in the funding world about that there really are people out there that don't drive. So, and then free cycles and MIST, which you'll hear about later. We provide the following services. So we have a student-owned and operated park and ride system. We started out with a van that broke down on its first route. It was donated to us by Mountain Line. We kept trying to, initially, people said, no one will take the bus, don't bother. But we invested quite a bit of money, got a single bus out there. Today we have 9 buses. We run a bus to East Broadway. It's just it's a smaller bus. It's a smaller amount of people. We think we could do better on that route. We have 2 shuttles that run to the College of Technology that are cram-packed. We offer a late-night bus to downtown and back. I like to call it a late-night safe ride program. Students usually call it the drunk bus. But it has kept a lot of people in school and not without DUIs, and it has certainly helped the community be safer. It also helps get people from the library back to Lewis and Clark. So we offer 2 shuttles. Our biggest routes are to the South Park and Ride, which is to Lewis and Clark, and I skipped over that when I started. We have football shuttles and shuttles to other events. We have, just this year, you can go to asumbus.com and you can see live where our buses are. So if you're sitting in a building and you want to make sure a bus is on its way, you can just go to asumbus.com, see where it is, run out and catch it if it's there. So put that on your phones and you won't be wasting your time standing out at the bus stop. This is our ridership. When we had the van and then went to a little bit larger 15-passenger bus, we gave about 3,860 rides. And last year, we gave 381,000 rides, and that's in 9 months. It's had a good growth. Our football shuttles are picking up. We do struggle a little bit with the football shuttles because athletics does charge people $2 to take the bus that day. I don't know why, but Grizz card holders still get to ride for free. So this year our ridership's up about 10%. I guess that's all I want to say about that. I did want to show you that some of the pollution savings, everybody has a little bit different statistic of exactly, this is off a calculator that does for public transit. So it has a significant savings for the valley. And what we've actually learned, most of all, is what I started to tell you initially, is that when people said, when the administration said, you know, we've tried this 3 times, no one will take the bus in Montana, they just drive. We just said, no, that's not true. It's just never been frequent enough. So what we found out is if you make it easier than driving, which we do, it's every 5 minutes, you can just go stand at the corner and catch the bus, people will use the bus. It doesn't take them long to figure out, oh my gosh, I could drive around in circles for 10 minutes, or I could park and then catch the bus and get delivered right to my door. So it works well. Park and ride systems, or these short transit systems that we have that people don't have to read a schedule, they don't have to worry, am I going to get on something that's going to take me to the wrong place? It's all going to campus. It's very simple, so it's a great training ground. Once you've got on that bus, then you might think, well, I see those mountain line buses, I probably could handle taking that also. And it did initially increase University of Montana ridership on the mountain line system by 20%. So it really does help feed the other transit system also. It is student owned and operated, and the cool part about that is it's all student drivers. That is not something that is done nationwide. Usually at universities, they'll hire a percentage of student drivers. We have all student drivers, and we do that on purpose because it's student fees coming in and we want it to go back into student pockets. Each driver has 50 hours of training to get through a CDL process, so it's not cheap to do that. And it's hard work to keep 30 drivers, which is what we have, 30 student drivers, and have them ready from August 1st till the first day of classes to drive for you all. But it's a great advantage for those students. They now have a CDL in their pocket, and the next summer, one guy earned $40,000 in a summer working in Alaska for a tour company. So it's a huge advantage for students to get their CDL, and we pay pretty well also, so because it is a really intense job. Also, students we survey everybody. You'll be seeing it in the next couple weeks. We survey park and ride riders. We survey the general student population to say, are you satisfied? Do you want more? Where do you want more? You'll be seeing that soon. And then we try and get that for you as soon as we can. Unlike a public transit agency that has to follow a lot of federal rules and regulations, we try and follow all of those federal rules and regulations, except we buy old buses. We buy, used buses. Instead of $325,000, we buy an $80,000 bus. And so, we can do a lot of things that your standard public transit company can't do. So it has its advantages. We can also run all other programs that you'll see here in just a minute. Like, we started the first 2-day bike checkout program. Has anybody seen the yellow bikes around? They're a great little bike that we actually just 2 weeks ago are going to start replacing, sadly, but they're starting to fall apart. So they're going to get changed with another yellow bike that's just a little bit sturdier than they were. But it's been a great program, especially for international students, for people that are here for short term, for people that just want, they happen to be on campus, they've come by bus, they need to run a quick errand. You can just go to the source in the UC, check out a bike for 2 days for free, and then bring it back and check out another one if you need it. We have bike ambassadors on campus. This came about 6 years ago. There was a senator on campus that decided that he didn't like bikes on campus, and he tried to start a movement to remove bikes from campus. And there was a real conflict on campus, the pedestrians that feel frightened by bicyclists, the bicyclists that feel frustrated by groups of people that just hog the sidewalk, the drivers that are frustrated by everybody because they can't find a place to park and they can't get through the congestion. And so we hired bike ambassadors to try and work with all those populations and to help everybody understand that basically it's just moving about campus respectfully. And we put together, there's a really nice flyer over there about the Respect campaign that just kind of suggests that if you're walking in groups, you might want to walk in 2s instead of 3s so that other people can get by you. When you're biking on campus, that you'll slow to twice the speed of people walking and let the other people know as you pass them by. We hand out headlights and tail lights and bike bells to try and, make bicyclists. The biggest thing I hear all over the community is those bicyclists, they just dart out of nowhere and they never have a light. So we said, okay, let's light them up. So we started buying bike lights. If you don't have one, stop by our office. We have little red flashy lights that say Light Up Missoula. So stop by. We want everybody to be able to see you, and we'd really love to see you all try and follow the rules of the road if you possibly could. And don't bike downtown on the sidewalks. Use the new fancy bike lanes that are downtown. That's not what they're called. Cycle tracks. So that's the bike education. You got the full spiel there. But we have bike ambassadors out on campus. They also do 2 events a year, a spring fling and a fall fling, trying to help people get we bring bike shops to campus and get your chains oiled and air in your tires. And we even will help you make fenders. We have some old sign pieces that we'll help you with to make fenders. And currently they're working on a winter bike program, so check it out if you see them. We have a semester bike program that we started a few years ago. We started out with 15 bikes. It was wildly popular. We doubled it to 30. We really could double that again. You can check out a bike for the full semester for $30. It comes with a headlight, a tail light, a helmet, and a lock, so it's a screaming deal. We've added bike parking all over campus. We've cleaned up some bike parking, and there's a long way to go with that. But we'll keep working on it. We did bike counts. We don't get those done as often as we would like to because it's really time consuming. But We did 2 different bike counts, and from, let's see, 2003 to 2008, there was a 117% increase in people biking. It has exploded along with the student population. So there's lots of bikes on campus, as you can see. We talk to everybody at orientations, we talk to parents, we talk to students, we try and get people to leave their cars at home. Because really, Missoula is 3 miles. Anywhere in Missoula, you're 3 miles from anywhere you want to go. You really don't need a car here. So we do our best to try and encourage people not to bring them. Let's see, we employ about 35 students. And we also work on, I think the biggest thing that we do, or one of the big things that we do, is work on transportation citywide. And you might say, well, why does a campus transportation office care about the city? But your trip doesn't start and end on campus. So if you're not going to have a car, you need to be able to move about the community safely without a car. So we work very hard at making this community be a great place to get around without one. And we've had some great projects. One coming up that we'll talk about later is Russell Street. We worked hard on an Arthur 5th 6th design. If you're going to be here next year, I think it's next year, that project should begin. It started out as a pretty awful project with intersections that were wider than Reserve and Mullen. And it's turned into a project that is quite acceptable and actually will really improve campus transportation, particularly on the east side. If you think about coming over the Van Buren Street Bridge and the Jeanette Rankin Park, Madison Bridge, I always call it Van Buren, so it's Madison. The east side of that, where the underbridge goes down to the trail system, and as that comes into campus, that's going to improve immensely. So there will be ultimately a 2-way bike path coming up from the underbridge all the way to the music building. So I think it's going to be a really nice improvement on that side. There's some problems still with the other side a little bit, but I do ultimately think it's going to be a good fix for campus. So be watching out for information about that. There should be a public meeting sometime this year. We've worked on long-range transportation planning. We've worked on national and statewide issues. One of the biggest problems for students on campus is getting here and getting anywhere else. There's no train, there's terrible bus service, and I'm really thrilled to hear about a new carpooling. We've tried carpooling, ride sharing. It's a very hard sell in Montana, so we'll try it again and see if we can get it going. But it's something we really need to work on. There's a project that we worked hard on and we still are working hard on, which is bringing the Southern Amtrak route back to Montana, which would connect all of our major cities with rail. So write your congressman, tell him it's an important thing that we get that Hiawatha back. So there's some incentive programs that you can check out. How many of you participated in Walk and Roll Week last year? Anybody? Yeah, it's a lot of fun. In the spring, during Missoula's Bike Walk Bus Week, we run a big event on campus. We try and get up about 250 volunteers to hand out raffle tickets to everybody coming to campus by any way but driving alone. And we have great prizes and a band and a big celebration at the end of the week. So it's a lot of fun. We've invested heavily in transportation as students, and so has the university invested in transportation options for the Missoula community. Sometimes you hear people say, you know, why doesn't the university build more parking? Because we've invested in transportation, and ultimately we've gotten way more. We've served way more people than we could have with one 500-stall parking garage. If you envision that there are 18,000, let's say 15,000 students, 3,000 to 4,000 faculty and staff trying to get to campus, not to mention visitors. And you build a 500-space parking garage, which would ultimately make parking go to about, I might be exaggerating this, but I think it was $600 annually from its $180 that it is now annually. You're serving 500 people. That's it. That's all. If you add a bus, we can serve 500 people an hour. So your buy is definitely better on the transportation side than it is on the parking side if you think it through. And there it is. Students continually support, our fee has the highest student support of any fee on campus. So what do we need? We have some old buses we need to replace. We'd love to build a bike hub on campus. In fact, right out in front of the University Theater, right out in front of here. Just envision this nice bike hub where you could have some repair stands, you could check out yellow bikes, you could visit about bike trips, you could find a carpool ride share board, it'd be right out there, and there'd be big covered bike parking right as you come in off this two-way bike path from the trail system. It'd be a really nice option. We'd like to double East Broadway service. We'd actually like to ultimately, we have a vision for working with the rest of the community to try and build a Lewis and Clark type housing facility out on East Broadway, double that East Broadway service, and add a late night bus out to East Broadway, East Missoula area, and serve that area. We definitely need some more buses to the south just so that people don't get left. We'd love to see some Saturday and Sunday service because you're right, there's a lot of people that can't drive. Not just that don't have the money to drive, but people that can't physically drive. So there's that, there's seniors, there's no Sunday service in Missoula at all. So if you are unable to drive, you are unable to get around on Sundays unless you're able to walk. Covered bike parking at the dorms, lots of rusty bikes left at the end of the year. Community-wide, we definitely would like to see better regional transportation. It would be wonderful to be able to catch a shuttle every hour up to Hamilton area, quickly and easily get to Helena and back in the same day. All of those kind of things could happen with a little work. We'd love to see better service on Mountain Line. There's lots that they could do. And a big thing that we'll be talking to you about later is Russell Street. It's a huge issue for this community. And completing all our bike ped and sidewalk systems. Again, a little bit more about the Amtrak, the Hiawatha route. If you'd like to check with me later or check on our webpage, you can get this link and sign a petition asking your legislators to try and reinstate that Hiawatha route, which would be from Chicago to Seattle through all the major cities. It would be really nice for Montana. There is a trip planner on the Mountain Line website, and they are looking to install Next Bus on their systems also, so you're going to be able to just check when the bus is coming for both bus systems soon. A little bit more about Mountain Line and how to get involved with that, and about their funding, which is complicated to say the least. Okay. BWAM, if you really are interested in transportation options, BWAM is a great place, the Bike Walk Alliance for Missoula is a great place for you to get involved. So there's some flyers over there for BWAM, and it's a really good group of people that are really trying to make things better in this community and have done some great work. Mr. TMA, that is the site for the van pool. If you do live outside of town, you can contact them for van pooling. And that's my contact information. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any. No questions? We'll turn it over to Bob.
top, it's up, did everybody get to sign on to Trina's sheet? Everybody, please?
I have a question. I knew about the 2-day rentals on the yellow bikes. I've never heard about the renting bicycles for the whole semester. You said you could do that, right? Or there's a
Yeah.
certain number of them. Is that the yellow bikes too, or is that?
No, they're a black bike. It's a Kona bike. It's a 3-speed, poster brakes with a hand front brake on it also. You should, if you're interested in a semester bike, stop by our office and get on the sign-up list for spring semester because they go fast. So they're usually all checked out even before the semester starts, so. Well, our office is in the University Center, UC 114, so just across from Quick Copy in the University Center.
You rent those yellow bikes at the source too? don't
Yeah.
you?
Can you hear me? Ron, is that okay? So we're going to run through the history of transportation just pretty briefly, about a dozen slides, just to give a little context. Let's see if I can change the slides from here. The very early forms: walking, canoe, camels, horses, pretty sustainable. The wheeled cart came in around 3500 BC. Anyone know when the wheelbarrow started appearing on the scene? About the year 200. The first public transportation system, basically, in this picture's from later in the 1800s, but around the mid-1600s is when horse-drawn public transportation was first used. Steamship. Anyone taken a steamship across the ocean? No one. Bicycles. Around the 1800s, and even earlier is when Leonardo da Vinci started making his first bicycle sketches. Trains. Yes, let's get the Hiawatha back through Missoula. Train service was pretty frequent. You can, yeah, this train ran from 1854 to 1954. We had trains through Missoula, passenger rail, until about 1972. And the highways basically took all the funding, and trains couldn't compete. So now it's getting back what we lost a while ago. What kind of car is that? What model? The Model T, the one we hear about a lot. About the 1930s. So now we're fast forwarding a little bit. And this is not an exhaustive look at transportation history. Little pieces. Modern buses, trams. Anyone traveled in Europe on buses or trams? Where'd you go? Paris. Okay, so this kind of leads us into the next realm. I mean, traffic jams is one issue with over-dependence on vehicles. Just had a spill in the Gulf, largely dependent on our maybe addiction, you might say, to oil. Air quality. I mean, we could go on, but we need to focus on solutions. Let's bring it back to Missoula. We've had 4 Higgins Street bridges, and they sort of mirror that bigger look at transportation through history. The first Higgins Bridge had only pedestrians and biking. There were no cars in Missoula till about 1912, when 2 brothers from Chicago brought one to town. They rented it out. Anyone know where this bridge is today? It's the Van Buren footbridge. So it was, instead of demolishing it, it was just slid upriver a bit. I don't know how they did it. Here's the second Higgins Bridge, What do you notice about that different from the first one? Trolley. Missoula had pretty robust trolley system. Pretty wide sidewalk. Wider than the sidewalk today. Looks like you could walk side by side on that sidewalk. You can't do that on today's Higgins Bridge, can you? Turn your shoulder a little bit. If you meet someone coming from the other way, especially a wheelchair, then you might have to even climb up on the railing. This is the third Higgins Street Bridge. What's different with this one from the second one? Trolley tracks are gone. So that's a long story. I don't know it all, but General Motors, I think, bought up a lot of the trolley systems and took them out. Promote more motorized and personal transportation. Here's the fourth Higgins Street Bridge, 1962. So I think this is the sidewalk right here. It looks like someone's walking right there. And so we're about due for another Higgins Bridge, and I think it's going to be at least rehabbed majorly in a couple years. So we have another opportunity to remake the Higgins Street Bridge. These are the programs I work with. Has anyone been to the Free Cycle bike shop? Several of you probably made a bike, or you fixed your own bike, or you got spare parts. Come visit our shop. We're on the web, freecycles.org, and that also has a lot of information about MIST and our kind of grander goals of a city, a community that works for everyone, walking, biking, buses, and the drivers, just not so heavily dependent on the system, the automobile system as we know it today. Europe has a very diversified system. And they have congestion issues. They have people that are run over. They're not perfect, but we can learn from what's going on in Europe. Typical American city, and Missoula is better than this, but not by a whole lot. More of a monoculture. Free Cycle started by putting 50 green bikes around street corners on campus in 96, ride one wherever you want, and just leave it for the next person. We did that for a couple years. And then we moved more into people building their own bikes for transportation. Any one of you could build a bike from scratch. It's not hard. Just come in. We have tools. We have people wanting to show you and help you. This is our shop. So that's another type of job you could get involved with in sustainability. Working with tools, repairing shoes, repairing bikes. Nancy's got great programs with transit. So those three are very powerful in sustainable transportation: walking, biking, and transit. We also do fun rides at Free Cycles. We did one to Lubrecht 2 weeks ago. I see a few riders in here. This was one we did to Hamilton about 4 years ago, and there's a dangerous stretch of highway between Missoula and Lolo. There's no path, so we created a bicycle ferry. You go up and over Zumwalt Way and Trails Inn, Lower Miller Creek, and you come out to the river, and you can see Lolo on the other side, but you have to either build a bicycle ferry or swim with your bike or be a long jumper, something. And one day there will be a trail between Missoula and Lolo. There's a group that meets once a month to work on that. We have a festival of cycles, try to build community, build bikes, reuse old things. Whatever you dream up, come to Free Cycles and we'll help you create it. We are expanding to what we're calling the pedal-powered warehouse in about a week. And we have a warehouse where we'll have lots of parts and welders and a lot more space to spread out. So we hope to really expand and get more projects going. Let's look at a little bit of Missoula's bike system around town. Does anyone bike this every day? Anyone in here? Not a soul? Yes? You bike that? Going, where is it? Where's that? Rattlesnake, going up to the Rattlesnake. So it's a pretty wide bike lane, very wide, but when you get right there, and this is what we hear all the time. Nancy hears it on campus, I hear it at Free Cycles, I hear it in my MIST work, the city hears it. A good system, everyone's working towards that, but we've got to take care of the trouble spots. Like a circuit board, it's not going to work well if you have trouble spots. We always try to put together renderings, and we put this forward about 4 years ago when the road was repaved. We said, take these 12-foot lanes, city and state, make them 10-foot lanes like a lot of places are doing, and you get a bike lane in. And it was said, no, we can't do that. Well, now you're seeing actually some 10-foot lanes in town, driving lanes. They work fine, they calm traffic, and they give you extra space. Public space is for everyone, and it's critical to squeeze out and be efficient with that space. Make it work for everyone. Arthur by campus. Whenever I see these chip seals tags, I know the road's getting ready to be repaved, and that's a time to get the tape measure out and see how you can tune up the road. Why driving lanes? So the city said, okay, well, sure, we'll add another foot to the bike lane. This is a pretty good bike lane on Arthur Avenue. We've got it pretty good in this part of town. That's a 6-foot wide bike lane. You can ride side by side, and that's legal, on a 6-foot lane. 5 feet is the national minimum, and cities and states tend to build to the minimum. So it's better to have a wider standard. This was way under the 5-foot minimum, especially when you count, this is called the gutter pan. This is the seam. Asphalt and concrete, you create a hazard right there. And that has since been widened. With good advocacy, things get done. Anyone bike this? Where's this? What road? Stevens. It used to be a little skinnier, and a few of us said, well, wait a minute, that's not 5 feet, and the city went back and put in this line. This is still a bit of a hazard. We just got a report the other day of someone whose trailer, luckily it was carrying food and not a child, but the right wheel hit that curb and tipped over. The bulb outs, as they're called, can work well though. Usually they only come out to the edge of the parking because it gives the pedestrian a shorter crossing distance. So the motive is good. It's just that it's tough to balance all these needs. And I'll give a lot of credit to the city and state officials who have jurisdiction. They're learning a lot. They're doing the best they can, but it's up to us and voices and citizen action to keep pushing forward. This was a bike lane that was put in the wrong spot, so the city painted over with gray and moved it out about a foot. And every inch matters. Has anyone been so-called doored on your bicycle? Adoring. I was doored. Luckily, just tipped my handlebar on Higgins by Liquid Planet, but that throws your handlebars. How did your dooring happen?
Went fine, actually.
You're here.
The lady was really upset.
Yeah.
That hit me.
Was it in Missoula?
Yeah.
What part of town?
It was on 5th Street.
5th.
Yeah.
Was this in the last couple of years?
Like a month ago.
Okay. We'll get to that. There's a slide on 5th Street. That bike lane is a bit skinny. It doesn't meet the 5-foot minimum at all. Brook Street just got bike lanes this summer. This is a photo rendering one of our volunteers put together. If anyone can do Photoshop work, please get in touch with me. We'll have you redo streets. First you can do them on computers, and then people can visualize and say, how can we, okay, that's how we can make this street different. And actually, I haven't taken an after photo to compare them, but I think Brook Street came out pretty good. The bike lane's even a little bit wider than shown in this photo. We knocked on every door of a person who was going to lose parking and trade for a bike lane. I did that personally. 3 days before council voted on this. 28 people answered their door. 24 said, we would gladly lose our parking in front of our house for the bike lane, knowing that there will still remain parking on one side of the street. 4 people said, no, we don't want to see that happen. We want our parking. So we took that data to council, and those 4 people, I've talked to them since. A couple of them are still upset, very upset. And a couple of them said, it's not that big a deal. But dialogue is part of how communities change. Let's look at some walking issues. Pedestrian streets, what a lovely place to be in a middle of a city or a community. Most European cities have walking streets, pedestrian piazzas, plazas. Some American cities do, and there's sort of a revival. On our website is a paper called The Revival of the Pedestrian Mall, looking at options for Missoula. Anyone been to Burlington on this street here? I like to show this slide because we cherish the oval. I'm sure all of us do. You've probably thrown a frisbee, kicked a hacky sack. Anyone taken a nap on the oval? You just studied too hard and yeah. It wasn't always a car-free area. Places changed, cities changed, universities changed. There was driving until 1955. There was some parking and it was a driveway. How did that change? It'd be a curious thing to look into. Was it the president who made a ultimatum? Was it a student group? Students for walking on the oval? Who knows? Never looked into that story. I bet it's in the Kaiman archive somewhere. Road diet, otherwise known as a 4-lane to 3-lane reconfiguration is one way to put it. Missoula has done 2 of these. Very beneficial in my opinion for all modes of traffic, including drivers. Okay, this is a 4-lane road. 2 lanes in each direction, parking. What's the challenge with biking on this type of road? There's no bike lane. What's the challenge for walkers?
It's very broad.
It's broad. Broadway between Orange and Russell used to look like this. Now it looks like this, minus the parking in some areas. 5 pedestrians had died on Broadway over 7 years crossing the road. A big danger is when you're crossing, 1 car may stop, but here comes that second car. Or 3 lanes may stop and the 4th one doesn't have the visibility. Even for drivers, if you go watch Higgins and Broadway downtown in the still 4-lane sections, what do you get? A driver turning left backs this lane up. Go watch traffic. Watch how it happens in this town. Sometimes it's boring, sometimes it's fascinating. You can just watch your community in action. You have people pulling out real quick to go around, and that's where we have a lot of our crashes in this town. This takes the same curb to curb width. It doesn't move the curbs. You can repaint the road. 3 lanes, you get the center turn lane. The bikes have space. When a car stops for a pedestrian, there's not another car coming around. And the left turners of drivers have their own place to turn. This is the old Broadway. It was changed about 5 years ago now. 4 lanes, wide open, encouraged high speeds. This is a 3-lane Broadway today. This is at the Burton crossing. You have bike lanes. You can take the center turn lane and put in some, these are pretty rough. I mean, it'd be great if someone went out there this weekend and put flower pots all over those. Make it a little more beautiful. But the drivers, it's a slow, smooth flow. All sorts of bike styles.
Bob, real quick, has there been any deaths or any big statistically relevant injuries the last 5 years on Broadway?
No, there have been fender benders. The injury crashes have gone way down. There was a Missoulian article about a year ago talking about crashes going up, and I looked into that. It was at the 2 bookends where the stoplights are at Orange and Russell. That's where the crashes continue to happen. Has anyone been to Copenhagen? This might be a good model for a citywide bicycle checkout system. There's 2,000 of these special bikes in Copenhagen. They're all locked with a chain, and the key is stuck in the handlebar. You take a $3 coin, it's 20 kroners, I think. You put it in the handlebar, the key pops out, and you have this bike as long as you need it. When you put it back into one of the 120 racks, you find a rack that has a chain just hanging, put the key in, your coin pops back out. So it's a deposit system. Paris is doing a very fancy 20,000 bicycle card swipe system, high-tech electronics. That can work, but it's also very expensive. They've had some issues with bikes breaking down, and I really like the low-tech ways of doing things. This system in Norway, you give a $20 deposit, and to an actual person, you get the bike and you get your money back. And then our beloved Yellow Bike program. There's all sorts of ways to do checkout systems, community bike programs, bike sharing. This is a cycle track. When you have the bikeway between the parked cars and the sidewalk, it's typically referred to as a cycle track. Missoula now has a cycle track, North Higgins, between Broadway and Railroad Street. When I first saw this, I thought this was the answer to bike systems, much better in a bike lane. Since cooled on the idea because at the intersections, turning vehicles, this can still be a trouble spot. And while you feel safe on the protected sections, if there's alleys, cross streets, side streets, driveways, the crashes tend to go up. As with a bike lane, you're much more visible. So it's something for everyone to think about, because going from a bike lane system to a cycle track system is a big change. And the city leaders want opinions as to whether that Higgins system should continue all the way down Higgins. Here's just a regular bike lane system. This is kind of a nice touch, a little spot for left turning bikes. Here's Stevens. These lanes are about 12.5 feet, close to 13 feet wide. A typical car is only about 6 feet wide, and so you can narrow lanes and get in a bike lane. This was repaved 2 summers ago, so it was the opportunity to get a bike lane in. But someone has to raise their voice. It doesn't just magically happen, unless you have really good engineers and planners who are really well versed but they have to know the citizens support that. They're not going to go out on a limb or do things differently. This bike lane's a little too skinny, and this is where someone did get doored in Cambridge. Person died under a bus. It's a big deal when we're talking about how do we design our streets. Maintenance. Anyone bike in the winter? So now, where do we have a colored bike lane through an intersection? Higgins. We're using green. Brings visibility to the cycles, and it helps with drivers, just helps with transportation. What do you notice about this photo? How do you think this bike lane was put in, this colored bike lane in Norway? There's one clue. It's this used to be where the shoulder was. So when they repaved or repainted, they did what we're doing in Missoula, and that's narrow the traffic lane, the shared travel lane, and make dedicated bike space. Trails, self-explanatory. They're a good system, and connecting our trails is what Missoula can greatly benefit from. This refers to a technique you can do in neighborhood streets. Imagine each neighborhood in Missoula having one bicycle boulevard. Portland's starting to call them neighborhood greenways. There's only a few cities doing this. These can be potted plants that let bikes and pedestrians go through, but it's not a through street for cars anymore. But drivers can still access the street. A lot of times, drivers or homes have access on side streets and alleys. So with conversation and simple engineering techniques, you can really create a bike walk system within neighborhoods. Anyone know Paul Lerner? This is Higgins. This summer I came across two crashes, cyclists who had just been hit, took some photos. I've been looking in the police records. This is right on the hip strip, a fairly dangerous area. He was squeezed between a bus and the parked cars. This one was about a month ago. The driver said she just did not see the cyclist, took a left into the biker, and the head leaves an imprint on the windshield. I don't know what happened to the cyclist. It's really hard to get public records. I'm always trying to dig into the records and see what's going on, because this tells a story. There was another one, that bike crash that happened And so 3 of us went out and painted 17 of these symbols. Thank you. I encourage everyone to, little tiny bike symbols when there was no traffic on the road at 9:30 at night to raise awareness that there's bikers on this road and that we all share this road. So this is a larger context. Step back. Little tiny bike guy. 2 per block, right out of the door zone, so cyclists don't ride here. The police did come and visit us as we were biking. I mean, the first thing the officer says, we applaud what you're doing. I said, oh, thank you. He said, but we still have to give you a ticket. So we're taking this to a jury trial in February. Stay posted. We feel like we did not damage the street and that we were trying to make the street safer. It brings up all sorts of issues about how do we share a street? How do we share streets? If someone went out and marked on a sidewalk where there was a little lip and I put a spray painted an arrow and it said hazard, a lip, is that damaging the sidewalk? Roundabouts, we have 2 in Missoula, Higgins Beckwith and where Lower and Upper Miller Creek Road come together. Compared to signals, they keep traffic moving, albeit at a slower pace. There is a reduction in all crashes, but here's the really big one. Huge reduction in injury crashes. You don't have the right angle collisions. And back to sustainable transportation, our push is safety, equity, environmental soundness.
Just for your information, there is another one just west of Pasco, a couple blocks
Oh,
in England there.
right.
I live
Yeah.
there and it works too.
Yeah, England Boulevard and Connery Way, or yeah. This is a before picture in Germany. Need to get some before and afters put into this PowerPoint from Missoula, and that's an after. Here's some side by side. The reason the crashes drop is the speeds are physically lower. You're not staring at a light, you're looking at each other, and everything's right turns. So you combine those 3 things, and you may say, well, no signs, no lights, how could it be safer? Well, when we engage with each other and slow down, things do often become a lot safer. You can save space, you save money not having to power those stoplights all the time. I like to think of roundabouts as a bit more cooperative, where the signals tend to promote a little bit more competitiveness. Can you get through the light? Yellow, should I step on it? Should I come to a complete stop really quick? This shows how a cyclist uses a roundabout. The bike lane ends, just like it does at Higgins Beckwith. You look over your shoulder when you're back here somewhere. This should be dashed. And you either take this lane and go around, as a driver would, or if you don't feel comfortable, you have this option. So you have 2 options. You should dismount and walk around if you're going to use the sidewalk. They used to stripe bike lanes around roundabouts, but then drivers would try to get around the cyclists and it created blind spots. This is a truck apron. The large wheels of trucks can go up and over that apron, so this design prohibits you from having to make a really big roundabout for the large trucks. I do think we should be limiting the size of the really large tractor trailers, and there's a plan being crafted in Missoula called the Active Transportation Plan, and it's looking at some of these ideas. It's being facilitated by the city of Missoula with a lot of citizen participation. Pedestrians, looking at the safety between roundabouts and signals. Although these roundabouts typically in Australia are at the lesser volume intersections. So you can't just take data, look at it, and make a strong conclusion, but it can tell you and give you clues as to what you might want to look at next. But I think this is pretty strong data showing 614 pedestrians compared to 18 going to the hospital. A little bit on city design. This is a drawing out of a book of a city, some hilltop city in Europe. This is a human cell. Okay, a lot of planners, even I'll say more progressive type planners, like the grid system. I'm not a huge fan in my research and thoughts on this of a straight grid system. Right angle, right angle, right angle, right angle. Yes, somewhat of right angles in the grid system, but going back to a more organic city pattern based on the human cell, which is what this pattern is. Let's look at a couple examples. This gets into the field of biomimicry, and it even relates back to what roundabouts tend to do. Solar system, no right angles there, no stop and go. Down to the level of the atoms that make up everything. Rivers flowing to the blood, those are actually vessels that go to our eyeballs. Trees, not many right angles. Human skeleton. I'm glad I live in Missoula, but if you're going to have big cities, and if you travel, this type of grid pattern provides a lot of interest. Alleyways and dead ends and curving roads and even some confusion where you can get lost in a city. Down to the very minute level of curvilinear, organic patterns to your backyard or walkways. And so I think this is a big field, city-urban planning. I'd encourage you to get involved. Little roundabout in Italy. That was World Health Organization had Traffic Safety Day about 4 years ago. So a group of us built a roundabout right off the Higgins Bridge and had some flyers talking about how they work. Save a lot of gasoline without the stop and go. So we've talked about some tools: bike lanes, trails, sidewalks, 3-lane roads, single-lane roundabouts. Let me emphasize that there are double and triple lane roundabouts that becomes a lot more automotive based. And originally Russell Street had some proposals for double lane roundabouts. They tend to be a lot better than the signalized intersections like Reserve and Mullen, Reserve and South. But if you can do a single lane roundabout, maybe you add more bus service to lower your traffic volumes. The single lane roundabout tends to be a really good design. Services, buses and trains, bike share, car share, and our mindset, that matters, our values, how we engage. Let's look around Missoula. We've already talked about the North Higgins cycle track. This is a missed proposal for 5th Street and 6th Street. Today it's 2 lanes in each direction, no bike lane, except 5th did get a skinny bike lane 2 years ago. But really, we could convert one of those lanes into a bike lane. Motor vehicles would flow fine. It would give a good east-west bike lane across town. Here's the 5th Street section. And this is where you you were doored somewhere by the Big Dipper, right where that. Okay. I'll go look at that. It might pick up later in that block. I'm not sure. And then Nancy had talked about Arthur 5th, 6th. This was the original state plan to widen Arthur and Madison as you come off the bridge to 5 lanes here, take out these homes. This was almost universally opposed. And those voices and some action had the state's Department of Transportation say, okay, we won't do that plan. And now there's a lot of good planning in the works. We put this together about 8 years ago. We would love to see single lane roundabouts and make these 2 lanes 1 lane in each direction. Get rid of this road and make this a greenway for bikes and pedestrians, connecting this park into the riverfront trail system. Slow and calm this, make it a real livable system. We hold out hope and advocacy that we can do roundabouts, but we're also engaging and participating with ASUM and the city and the state compromise is probably not the best word because it's just working towards a better plan than this and something that'll work for students. But look for those projects because they can get better every time someone puts their voice in. This is a little bit, this is a rendition for Russell Street. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, thank you. Any questions on this? Molly?
I would love to see at the beginning of every school year some means of education in the Kaiman or in the transportation packets that you give to new students, how to run a roundabout, because there's such an intense learning curve among some of these out-of-state or out-of-town students who have not seen one. And just yesterday, there was there's some kids who really run it like it's a game, and we're peeling through it at 35 miles an hour. It was ridiculous. If there had been ice, they would have creamed everybody.
It's a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit, so that education, I agree, needs to happen, and also enforcement. Because if they're going to treat it like a game, that's not right. Should be a criminal mischief ticket.
Oh, life is wishing
Any other questions on some of the street design? So you all agree with roundabouts and wide bike lanes and more buses and trains, less lanes for motor vehicles?
Well, I guess, are you saying like a roundabout for like the Mullen Reserve, right, intersection? Were you saying that? Or just like a new design for it?
Well,
because when the roundabout, like there's so much traffic there, and I think roundabouts, like I actually don't really like them because I feel like people don't really like yield, and then I feel like she said, like some people just go really fast, and I think that if you put like one on like Reserve and Mullen, so many people would get in wrecks because it's just like such a high traffic area.
we could start with the simpler roads first, for sure. But Reserve and Mullen right now is the most dangerous intersection in the state of Montana. People are dying there on a regular basis. So if we put in a double lane roundabout and we did it with all the best practices of slowing traffic as they enter, we'd get some fender benders, but it would almost never have an injury crash. So ideally we would work to reduce our traffic volume so single lane roundabouts can work. That's one area I think a lot about. Would it be better to have a large roundabout at Mullen and Reserve and Reserve and South, because that's the second most dangerous, and the third is Third and Reserve. Reserve corridor is not working. So it's a really good question, and I'm not sure how we handle Reserve Street, the highway that comes through. There's a study coming up, $1 million study, to look at how do we redo Reserve.
Didn't they just redo the road on South and Reserve, that intersection? Do you like that or no?
Well, they added another turn lane from South onto Reserve, so it's sort of the old model of just adding more lanes to so-called relieve the congestion.
Well, I know, I used to go to Big Sky High School, and that extra lane there, it would cut off right after the gas station, so people would call that the racing lane, and they just try to get ahead of the other cars and cut them off and stuff. So I think it is good that they changed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say you should probably talk to driver's education people for high school students, because I went to Big Sky too, and I would argue it's probably not the out-of-state kids that don't know how to use them. It's the in-town kids, because I don't know, all of us, we only have really two, and so trying to maneuver them is really, really intimidating at first.
Has anyone gone through driver's education recently? Anyone? 2 years ago? Yeah. How long ago did you do it? Was there anything on roundabouts? Yeah, this societal the changes, including changes on the road, it takes a little while to get put in. One other quick thing is, anyone from Boston or New Jersey? No one. Alex used to be. The only Northeaster. They have what are referred to a lot of times as rotaries, which are higher speed. You can enter at 40 miles an hour, really large. And a lot of people, when I'd have roundabout pictures up at the farmer's market, they'd say, those didn't work. They're taking them out. Where are you from? Well, New Jersey. They are taking out the really large high-speed circles and trying to retrofit them with something a little calmer. There was another question.
Yeah, have you thought about like a proposal to lower the speed limit on Reserve and Mullen? Because I know it's 45 right now. If you lower the speed limit and put it in roundabouts, it seems like it would be a safer option.
That would be good, and the speed was lowered in the C.S. Porter school zone, and I think you're right. If we lowered Reserve to even 35 the whole way, the irony is people may get through there quicker with less stop and go. If you just have people moving at a slower pace, that can be really beneficial. So you should talk to this Department of Transportation. Thank you.
So these improved designs clearly help for the alternative modes. What good arguments do the car crowd have against them in terms of reduced or increased travel time for cars or whatever? I mean, is this something we can't win, or is this really doable?
It's really doable. It's so doable. I mean, the car crowd basically wins. The more people that walk, bike, and take transit, it leaves space for drivers. There's a study from Golden, Colorado. They put in roundabouts, and the speed went down, but the travel time did go down for drivers. What I hear a lot, and a lot of us do, is the gas tax. Why should our gas tax be used for a bike lane or a sidewalk? And gas tax funds about a third, maybe 40%. Alex, do you know what the figure is? 40%. All of our property taxes and all the general taxes, we're all collectively in this, paying for our roads. But does anyone else want to try to answer? Let me try to understand your question. You're just saying, putting out there that do drivers win when walking, biking, and transit's increased, or when we're investing into that? Can you?
Well, if we switch to a new culture where we're more close to the 25% across the board, like good European cities, clearly the cars will have a better time of it. It's how we get there. I imagine the people who are used to thinking about things in terms of just make the road wider and it'll solve the problem are going to see making the road narrower as the wrong direction to go. So how do we persuade them that that's not going to be worse for the cars in the short term?
Well, to try to answer the question, there are lots of interests, very powerful economic interests that have great political power. The oil industry, the highway building industry, the car industry itself. To say that the drivers are against this is the drivers are just presented with what they have. If Reserve Street wasn't here, how would Missoula have changed? I mean, who knows? But most likely, you'd still have drivers complaining about traffic, and you'd still have crashes going on. So I spent many years in this field, and there are institutions such as the Institute of Transportation Engineers, et cetera, who have all these formulas and such, but this is really change is a political process, and it is in this realm as well. And normally these ideas, these new ideas are put forward by citizens, and then using their own political power at the grassroots level, they make change incrementally. So you have places where that public participation is encouraged, like Boston or Portland. You see those changes. in other cities like Dallas or Houston, or not to pick on Texas, or Atlanta, you don't see those changes.
Did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, actually kind of coinciding with what you said. I'm from LA, one of the most congested places in all of the US. It's interesting because I saw that I actually live in Santa Monica specifically, and they started implementing roundabouts, and it's really changed a lot of the way that drivers act. And it's unfortunate that a lot of the larger population of LA doesn't act that way. I mean, they're just widening up the highways more and more and not really focusing on those things like that. So, but yeah, it does work when you do implement it, and it's unfortunate it's not, on a larger scale.
I think that's a great segue into talking about Missoula's next biggest project that could make a huge change in what this community looks like. And it's really important that everybody participates in this conversation in the next couple months, because even though the road probably won't be built for years to come, the decisions are being made now. So we all need to participate, and there's a few of us in this room that have come up with a citizens plan for Russell that we would like to give you a little taste of. So actually, Bob and I have been involved, I think, in every public meeting on this roadway since 1997. It's a lot of time sitting around in a room talking about a roadway. But what's really interesting about this is that at all of these public meetings, we would sit in the back and go, okay, here's the person that's going to talk about that they really want a super wide road and they just want to drive fast. And you know what? At every single meeting, people say, we don't want that. We do not want another reserve street. It doesn't work. It's not working out there. We don't want to see another one. We want an efficient road with sidewalks and bike lanes, and we want a bridge that doesn't shake. Everybody agrees on that. We don't want a bridge that shakes. So here we go. But what keeps landing back into people's laps is a very expensive 5-lane road that takes homes, businesses, has massive street crossings that you would be thoroughly intimidated by. It divides the neighborhoods. If you take a map, and we have one in our office, of where students live, you'll see that a lot of students live in what we call the Franklin to the Fort neighborhood, which is just west of Russell Street, because it's easy to come down 5th and 6th and hit campus. It's about 3 miles. But if you have to cross what is proposed, that you will all of a sudden feel as though you must drive to campus, because crossing that street would be deadly. So this is the proposed model, correct? At 3rd and Russell. Look at the size of this intersection. Just envision yourself as a human being trying to cross 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lanes of traffic, while the little white man goes, start crossing, and then it turns to red as you take the first step out into the street. And you're terrified till you get to the other side. And if you're elderly or handicapped or a child, you wouldn't even think of trying to cross that street. You would just turn around. I love this one person. If you ever get a chance to hear him, he's a resident here. His name is John Williams. And he talks about an elderly person with sight issues trying to see the little white man across the street, and he can't see it, so he turns around to see when it turns to pedestrian, and by the time he turns back around, it's red. So, it doesn't work. And look how expensive it is. So here's some of the properties that would be lost. And just kind of envision this corner. The red lines on this are the beginnings of some of what will turn into roadway if this 5-lane proposal happens. Look at this thing. It's amazing.
And how long would you be waiting?
Oh yeah, just envision how long you would be waiting at that intersection. It definitely, 4 lanes does not mean that you're safer. It just doesn't mean that you're safer. Those statistics are real. And the wider, the thing that we hear a lot is, oh, it will be like a Stevens model. Envision Stevens. Start thinking about Stevens. How many pedestrians do you actually see crossing Stevens? Not very many. It's really wide. How many bicyclists do you see on Stevens? Not very many. It's fast. I am very conscientious when I do drive about driving the speed limit, and I have a heck of a time going the speed limit on Stevens. It's wide lanes, and it just encourages you to drive fast. You can't help it. Watch yourself next time you're on that street and see how fast you drive. You have trouble at the good food store now, just envision what would happen then. So, you know, is this what Missoula wants? More noise, faster traffic, not being able to cross the street? And does it really reduce congestion? That's the next thing that you really have to think about. As soon as a big wide street is built, it's like a river and opening up a little inlet. The water starts pouring down the inlet. You make a wider street, and it's not going to just be the same traffic that's going to be going down that street, so there's more room for that same traffic to go down that street. All of a sudden, people are going to go, wow, that's a big wide street that's free and moving easy, and so they all go there, and it's not free and moving easy. It's kind of the same concept as the parking garage. You're not going to ever meet that demand by building more. It's just not going to happen.
That triggered something I want to talk about, the concept of induced demand. So a lot of times the engineers will look at their formulas and see that traffic growth is happening on a road like Russell. Traffic's increasing. So they'll project that growth out. They'll take the line. Anyone can do this with a ruler and paper. 20 years, come back to your axis and see how much traffic is projected for 20 years down the road, and then say, well, we must build the road bigger to accommodate that. The concept of induced demand speaks towards you're creating the traffic that you're planning for. If Russell goes from its 2 and 3 lane road nature today to a 5 lane, there would be somewhere around at least 30 homes and businesses taken out. Where do they go? They have to go further. It's kind of a root cause of sprawl. If the road's harder to walk or bike across, it induces more people to drive. So it's almost this spiral we're in, and maybe Los Angeles is a good example of that. When do you stop that road widening spiral? Well, you either can just stop it or actually reverse it, and that's why I really like 4 to 3 lane conversions and inserting bike paths and bike boulevards and walking ways, because that can turn that community around a little bit. This is a rendition done by Jordan Hess. Anyone know Jordan? Just graduated last year. Just a 3 lane, that's why it's called 3+. 3 lanes, including that center turn lane. The plus is bike lanes, boulevards, sidewalks. Instead of spending that $50 million on a 5 lane road, this would be a lot cheaper. We don't have a cost estimate. But also built into this is taking a lot of that money savings and reinvesting in our transit system and other streets and other modes, so we become that community that's that works for everybody. Anything? Nothing there? RussellStreet.org. Go there and you can learn about, so we have designed this out with details, and The process right now is the environmental impact statement, 9 years in the making. The final edition is due out in a couple months. There may or may not be another round of public comment, but just today at City Council, the Director of Public Works was updating council. I got this report from Nancy, and she spoke up for this type of roadway because some of our officials are acting like the 5-lane is a done deal. They have their job to do, yet it's not a done deal until the process is over, until the concrete's being poured, and even then things change. But let's get this right way up front. So really encourage you all to keep your eyes out for anything that you can add your voice to on the Russell Street project. There's the russellstreet.org. There is a petition, and you can sign that online. You can talk to your council reps. Everyone has 2 council reps. Any questions about Russell Street? Does anyone cross that every day?
Who actually will make the decision? I mean, who is it most supposed to influence?
The City Public Works, and ultimately council approves what Public Works wants to do, or they may disapprove. The State Department of Transportation, Federal Highways, those 3 entities, they all keep saying that it's they're all partners and it's a joint decision. But I've always been unclear if it has to be consensus or if Federal Highways has more sway than the other ones.
I fight between Brooks and Mount. They just redid that street. It's a death trap. There's no bike lanes, there's no...
On Russell?
Yeah, south of Mount.
Yeah.
That Trappers Square.
They just
area.
repaved that?
They just redid that.
Yeah. The Bike Walk Alliance sent a letter saying, please do a 3-lane with bike lanes, and I don't even think that there was a response to that letter. But yeah, some of this is unfortunate. We have to not get it right at the beginning.
Well, I would encourage your group to consider the area south of Mount as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important at this point for people to really talk to your city council representative. That's going to make a ton of difference. Call the mayor, write to the governor. It's a political process at this point, and that's the only way we're going to change anything. So this is really critical to the way Missoula changes. It can either bring downtown out or bring Reserve Street in. So if you really envision that, if you want more Reserve Street and you really like Reserve Street, then hope for a 5-lane Russell. But if you like downtown and you like to talk to people on the sidewalk and walk to the good food store and use the trail system, then call your council people, call the mayor, write to the governor, tell them it's really critical to Missoula that we build this street right. And it's important to do it now. It really is.
So those entities rather than any of the departments of transportation?
That's what I would say. I would say it's a political process at this point, personally. People have different opinions on that. It's interesting, there's really good news, actually, nationwide. President Obama has asked federal agencies to begin to work together, which is a novel concept. But I just went to a meeting where he's asked HUD, HUD, EPA, environmental folks, the Federal Highways and Federal Transit to begin working together to help build sustainable communities. And it's really exciting to have that process beginning. However, it's a little unfortunate for Missoula and this process because there's been 9 years of work and people are really starting to get dug into whichever side they're on. So, that's where we're a little unfortunate. If we'd been 5 years later, it would be obvious that it should be a 3-lane roadway. But when this started in the 90s, this was the thinking. The 5-lane roadway was the thinking, and it's pretty hard to get people to change.
Any other questions or comments, thoughts? Who's got one?
Can I ask some bike ones? I noticed on this Missoula bike and activity map you have up there, it's got bike lanes, bike routes, and bike trails. And I wondered if you would explain the difference in those. And then also tell us what's the status of the river trail getting up to the California Bridge, the South River Trail getting up to the California Bridge.
Well, that's one of my pet projects because I go there every day. And I have to ride up California Street to catch the trail system. It causes me an extra 3 minutes, and I can't wait for that bridge to happen. But there is going to be a bridge off the California Street Bridge so that you can stay along the river the whole way. And that was supposed to be built 2 years ago. They're having a few engineering issues. They promise us that it will be next summer. So that is coming. It's on its way.
Actually, I spoke to MRA just a week ago, and they're hoping by Christmas.
By Christmas,
Yeah,
though, might
yeah.
do it.
But that's, who knows?
Yeah.
Don't get your hopes up.
Oh, no, get your hopes up. Keep calling them. Keep calling them. We need that.
Clarification, you said there's going to be a bridge off of the California Street Bridge.
Yes, because there is a little ditch, and so they're going to make a long ADA accessible bridge to connect to the bridge. So it's not a steep drop like it is now. I mean, you can do it now. You just have to go down that little trail and across the little board at the bottom. But they're going to make a nice straight bridge off the bridge. So, and bike lanes, bike routes. Bike lanes are painted on the roadways. And when you get to the intersection, you should join traffic to go through the intersection. That's how bike lanes work. Bike routes are just good places for bikes to travel. So on that map, they just show good biking facilities, even though they might not have bike lanes. Maybe slower traffic streets, good neighborhood routes. That's what's listed on there. And then trail systems, obviously. We have a relatively good trail system. There's some holes that need filled in. So, but we're working on that. Yeah.
Advocacy program for 3+ routes.
Yes, we do. So if you participate, if you want to get really involved, BWAM is a great place. So the Bike Walk Alliance for Missoula has a, what's it called? The 3P committee is what you would want to participate on, and that's a great place to get involved with that. Also, at any time, you can, ASUM Transportation is also working on this. ASUM has passed resolutions supporting 3+ for Russell. So student on campus, we've been actively participating in the 3+ process.
I think you're right, though, and this is what's getting talked about, but it hasn't been fully fleshed out. What would a campaign be?
I mean, just going door to door and maybe just telling the public about it and just showing maybe just the picture of what it would be and what our plan is, you know. I think that would be a huge thing and what they can do.
Bob has spent many, many Saturdays down by the farmer's market with pictures of the proposed plan and the citizens plan.
Not in 2 summers, though. Huh? I took in the last 2 summers off. I did it.
Oh, okay.
Got married one summer and Anything else? Yeah.
I actually have a question about, sorry. I have a question about the bike system. I've noticed that on Broadway, it kind of goes in and out of, like, there being a bike lane. And
On Broadway or
like
Kings?
farther down Broadway closer to when it splits with Mullen. And also I've noticed that Mullen can be really kind of dangerous because there's a sidewalk and multiple times I've been biking on the sidewalk because the traffic gets so close to the curb that, and then there's another bike coming where one of us has to go into the grass or even in the street. I'm just sort of wondering, will there be any, like, how often are the bike lanes painted, and is there any way to like get like a petition together for specific intersections or blocks to be painted when that happens?
The streets, the long shot is they're always repaved every 10, 12, 15 years. They're repainted all the time. And if the lines fade enough, then you can get the widths changed when they're just repainted normally. It's always worth, if you have one street that you bike on a lot and it doesn't feel right, it's worth just calling City Hall and asking for who's the person you need to talk to about this street. And if they say, well, I don't know, or I'll send you to that person, get very specific questions and answers back, because every street can get changed. Mullins, that's a tough one. But that one is going to be redone next summer. That's the stretch between Broadway and Reserve Street.
So that is for the street department, right?
Yeah, the bike ped office too.
Yes.
The bicycle pedestrian office.
Missoula has a bike ped coordinator, Phil Smith. He's a good one to talk to, but you almost don't want to just talk to one person. You want to find out who's in charge. Phil Smith is a program manager. He's not the engineer that makes the final decisions. We have a public works department, and there's a director there, Steve King. He does make a lot of the local decisions. And then the state has jurisdiction over a lot of the main arterial roads. So it can get really, really complex, but if you keep asking the questions, you'll eventually find what you're looking for. You want to add anything?
Well, I did want to add one quick little story. So it's all very transportation geeky, but there's a committee called the Transportation Technical Advisory Committee, or the Transportation Policy Coordinating Committee. And there was a little girl that wanted to see a trail system out on Mullen Road. And she went door to door and got a little petition. She had about 30, 40 signatures on it. And she came in front of the Policy Coordinating Committee, scared, shaking little 8-year-old girl with her little sheet. And that's where they make the decisions on where money goes. And that day, money went to the Mullen Road section. So get yourself a little girl, help her get some petitions, and take it to TPCC.
I think we should thank our speakers.